All right, we are back with the second part of Brandon's jazz collection. There's a lot of stuff to get in here. We want to make sure we get all the good details, so I'll pass it back over to you, man.
Cool. Well, let's get started. Let's start off with some funk. Everybody knows about Tower of Power, and this is one of their iconic albums, sold out with their baritone saxophonist being featured as the album cover, which I think is really cool. And it's on a nice thick giant tag, which is probably the best thing about this shirt to me, because you don't see too many jazz shirts or funk, anything that's out of that jazz umbrella on a giant tag. At least I haven't over my years of collecting these jazz tees. So that's definitely one that I love for my collection. Let's move over into another one of my favorite Billie Holiday shirts. I know I had mentioned the one with her and the dog. It's very similar to this one, where she's standing in the center, but her dog is to the right of her, I believe. And same with the Billie Holiday hit at the bottom. I like that. Again, we got another 1949 hit. Doesn't have the club for this one, but I do like that it has the hit at the bottom. No back hit on this one, but just another really nice Billie Holiday shirt. Got this one in Lexington, Kentucky, maybe four or 5 months ago at an event. So definitely glad to have this one in the collection. And hopefully I can get that other Billie Holiday with her and the dog very soon. Got another one of... I'm not gonna lie, I said I didn't like Kenny G as much.
You got a lot of Kenny G.
But this, this album is a bop. I remember my mom got me this album. I was in middle school, I want to say, and I wore this record out. It's one of his better albums. He plays very well on it. Not that he doesn't play well on all his records, but he's very tasteful and musical on this album. Very, what's the word I want to use? Non-cheesy music. That's just the best way that I can put. Everybody knows him to be like a little corny, a little cheesy, but it's really beautifully written and arranged music for this album. And it means a lot more because I know my mom bought it for me, and I actually listened and appreciated this one whenever I was growing up and going in middle school as well. A very influential pianist, Bud Powell. In my master's program, my piano professor, Jed Patton, he always spoke very highly of Bud Powell, not only for his piano prowess, but the way that he approached music as well. He was a very good arranger and composer. And there's a famous Thelonious Monk tune entitled In Walks Bud, which was written for his pal and fellow piano player, Bud Powell, and it's one of my favorite songs to play. So typically when I know I'm going to play that song, I'll wear this shirt for the gig, just so the band members know, like, hey, there's going to be a potential for us to be playing this song, but they should get ready, because sometimes I'll just play a tune and they'll come in and know, like, oh, okay, this is what we're about to play. I know we were talking about jazz being, a big umbrella. Stanley Clarke, I would say, is a fusion bass player. He has a very rich bass tone, and I love his playing. He's still playing today, and I don't really see too many of his shirts, so I was very stoked when I got this one, and it's on the 707 tag? Yeah, UST 707, which is one of my favorite tags as well. And I like that this one has a different back hit, so just a little bit different with him, standing up. Yeah, very similar but different. But yeah, Stanley Clarke is one of the best living, bass guitar players today. He's still touring with his band, and I forget his most recent drummer. He was just in Indianapolis for Indie Jazz Fest, and he played with Dorian Phelps. So it was nice to see him and make that connection of him playing with Stanley Clarke and getting to listen to that type of energy and that type of music that Stanley Clarke loves so much from him. We got a nice blues tee. Robert Johnson, Hellhound on My Trail. If you guys know the story about Robert Johnson, how he sold his soul to the devil, allegedly. That's the lore behind it. So it's nice just finding this shirt, or it was nice for me to find this shirt especially in the condition that it's in as well, of one of my favorite Delta blues singers, Robert Johnson. He's not on it, and you'll see a lot of the black and white shirts like I've already shown with the different vocalists or guitar player, whatever instrumentalist it is, just sitting down. And there's one that I believe Carson has, Stay Tuned Vintage, of Robert Johnson, where he's just sitting down, and it has the hit with his name and I think the date of a recording. But I love those shirts, and it's just different because I hadn't seen this one before, with just, the little double hit over here and then the spell out for Hellhound on My Trail. Definitely a fun one. One of my favorite jazz magazines, Downbeat. It's a pretty old one. I want to say this one's from 94 or 95. I have another one of these, but this one's my favorite, only because it has all the different covers for the albums of the year, and it's the 75th anniversary as well. I believe they did a couple different prints for the 75th anniversary, but this one just happens to be my favorite because it has all the different players, and it has Cannonball Adderley here at the bottom as well. I think I still do have a couple of these. Let's see, I still have this one with Pat Metheny, and I believe I still have this one with Rashawn. But I'm not sure if I have any of these other ones still in my collection. But definitely one of the best jazz magazines that's still in print today, and hands down best jazz magazine partnered with shirts as well, because they have a lot of different jazz shirts that are pretty hard to find. Like Cannonball Adderley, I've been looking for one of those shirts, and the only ones that I've been able to find have been with Downbeat. So definitely can appreciate them for that, not only having one of the best magazines, but also having some of the best shirts.
Right.
Got another really good Buddy Rich here. A nice action shot, kind of like how Miles Teller was in Whiplash. You see the joy of him just playing. He was kind of a mean guy. He really was. A lot of the living legends who passed on stories, one reoccurring one is that Buddy Rich was mean to everybody in the big band. So if you were dragging, he might throw a stick at you. If you're rushing, he might stop and cut off the band and cuss you out. But anytime that he was playing and performing, you see this big smile or just him just enjoying himself. So that's one thing I can appreciate about him in all the different photos. He never really has a scowl. He's just always happy and enjoying the music and is in the moment. Although he was kind of an a-hole to everybody in his band. I think this is the first trombone shirt that I purchased, and my first and only trombone shirt, other than maybe a trombone shorty shirt that I have. Kid Ory, he is a Dixieland trombone player. He, I want to say around the 20s and 30s, was in the Dixieland jazz ensembles, as well as I think he spent some time in New Orleans in those bands as well. I know my buddy Robert, he studied, he didn't study with Kid Ory, but he studied with someone who did study with Kid Ory. So it's nice. And I think of him and my other buddies that play trombone, just because of how influential he was to them in getting the trombone. It's well due recognition. Definitely a fun
tag
one.
too, the All Sport.
Oh, beautiful All Sport, max weight. Another funny drummer. What's his name? I call him Michael Scott because he that's who he reminds me of, man. Like ever since I've seen Gene Krupa in The Office came out, I'm like, that's Michael Scott. So, because he makes the funniest faces when he's playing drums. He came out a little bit around the era of Buddy Rich and Max Roach as well, who's another phenomenal drummer. And yeah, definitely one of my favorite shirts, not only because of him being Michael Scott, but it's just a shirt that I don't really see too often. And yeah,
Is it cut off sleeves?
Yeah, cut sleeves. I may have one of the homies put on some sleeves for me, But I've been rocking it as is, and it makes me feel empowered. I feel strong like the drummers do whenever they're hitting their drum sets.
Yeah, I want to toss this one over to my buddy. He loves The Office. I want him to take a look at this one.
He really does look like Michael Scott. Okay, let me pass this one over to you.
Double.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite, or two of my favorite shirts. A beautiful Miles Davis front hit with a little, I call it binary. I don't really know what the style is, but I just call these like little ones and zeros put together to make his face. But it's the 1991 World Tour, which Kenny Garrett played on, and I can't remember who else was on this hit. But he has the coolest tour shirts, hands down. I've never seen a better tour shirt for jazz. You know, Miles Davis has some of the best ones, and it's not all just him. Sometimes it'll be the album cover or other band members that he's playing with. But I really love these shirts. You don't see them very often, and I believe they're both on different tags.
Yeah, it's just screen stars.
Yeah, and then this one is a switcher tag, and they're both the same size, I believe, but they're not the same size. That's
because
like,
they're on different teams. Yeah.
But
lie to you.
yeah, I love having this one in my collection. I got this one first whenever I went to Virtual Flea, and a week later, that one fell into my lap. Somebody just didn't want it anymore. It's like, I'll take it. I'll just double up for the collection. It's a great shirt, though. This is similar to the style of, I had mentioned Robert Johnson, him sitting down. This is very similar. Well, the back hit is similar to what I was talking about. Him sitting down, playing guitar, and then the Robert Johnson hit would be underneath. But this is one of my favorite blues shirts. I know it's not jazz, but jazz was derived from the blues and developed and became what it is now. But this is one of my favorite ones. Just a beautiful front and back hit. Very, very lightweight, super thin shirt. I don't get to wear this one too much just because it doesn't always fit me how I want it to, depending on the day. But this is definitely a great shirt with a hell of a lineup for the blues artists as well. Take a couple look up. Sonny Payne being one of my favorites as well.
Groove Holmes is on there.
Oh yeah, it's a great shirt. Let's see. Speaking of blues, we have another one. We got Howlin' Wolf. Nice blues festival with a beautiful back hit. Nice little front hit up here as well. I love these blues shirts. You can kind of find them quite often. I wouldn't say this one you can find quite often, but you can just find them in general. There's a lot of blues festivals, even more so than the jazz festivals. So finding the different blues shirts have been nice as well. Regardless of what era it is, I can still find some appreciation in it and just looking at the different players that they have on the front or on the back. This is a more rare Charles Mingus shirt. Phenomenal bass player and very influential for me, not only for his music, but in what he did with his music. So he did a lot of activism. He didn't mind speaking out with his music. And he has a song called Fables of Faubus, calling out the corrupt Governor Faubus. And I love the lyrics. Like he was so unapologetic with what he did with the music, which is what I think jazz is. You know, you're supposed to, be 10 toes down with whatever you feel and believe and whatever you're trying to say with the music. And he definitely was. He didn't mind cussing you out, and he didn't mind cussing you out with the music, though. That's one thing I can appreciate about him. He was always smoking a cigarette, too. So it's nice having a shirt, specifically the action shot of him smoking at one of the most famous jazz clubs, Cafe Bohemia or Cafe Bohem, depending on who you ask, of him just playing and enjoying a nice cigar or a cigarette, because he was always smoking somewhere. If you go back and look at different interviews or just him playing or rehearsals, stuff like that, I think I might have just posted one 2 weeks ago where they were in rehearsal and the saxophone player needed the mic turned on. So as he's smoking, he's yelling at the sound man, "Turn that fucking mic on." turn that fucking mic on. And I mean, they're still playing and rehearsing. So, you know, like I said, he's very unapologetic with the music. He doesn't mind speaking out. And that's just somebody that I really respect. I love wearing that shirt. Here's another one of my favorite Charlie Parker shirts. You don't see this one too often at all, with a nice script of his name, as well as a nice profile of him playing the saxophone, the alto, in fact. Some nice distressing at the collar, on the sleeves. This one's like warrants of perfection. So I wear this one quite a bit because I love Charlie Parker. You know, I'm a saxophonist. You gotta love Charlie Parker. He really helped develop bebop, which is the primary language that a lot of jazz musicians play today, even crossing over into hip hop, like Kamasi Washington, Terrace Martin, both of them play with Kendrick Lamar. They all play these type of jazz lines whenever they're improvising over his music. So it transcends different genres. So I really can appreciate and I love what Charlie Parker has done for the music. This shirt definitely probably my second or maybe my favorite Charlie Parker shirt. That's one jazz artist that has like some really, really cool shirts and awesome graphics. There's even a Nike collab with Charlie Parker, the Charlie Parker estate. And I think they did it for maybe one of the Final Fours in the 80s. And it's just, you know, him playing the saxophone. But it's nice that he's able to at least, you know, still get his recognition and, right. You know, have a couple different shirts for people to check out and still appreciate. Here's another one of, you can find this one pretty often. This is the one that you typically see of Charlie Parker. This was my first jazz tee ever. So this one means a lot. I always had seen this one whenever I was either on eBay or just searching in general. So whenever I finally got one for a good price, you know, I was stoked. So I'm gonna make sure that this one never leaves my collection, both on the Fruit of the Loom tag, but it's just an iconic photo of a younger Charlie Parker. I believe he's maybe like 38 or 40. I want to say 38 in this photo. He wasn't too old around here, playing on his signature Evelyn mouthpiece. And yeah, definitely one of my favorite ones. Very iconic. Let's see what we got here. Shout out to my brother at Naptown Thrift. He hooked me up on this John Coltrane because he knows out of everybody that I love John Coltrane. So anytime he gets stuff in, he makes sure to hook it up for me. Just a nice one of him playing. I love Coltrane for his demeanor, and I feel like this really captures his quiet, calm spirit, but very stoic and serious. But, you know, he was just focused all on the music, and I feel like this is really what captures that. I'll wear this when I'm trying to focus or if I'm studying, and I try to just channel that same type of energy into whatever I'm doing, typically studying. Yeah, speaking of Naptown Thrift, let's get into this one. Cincinnati Jazz Festival '94. The lineup's crazy. Absolutely insane. You got Mays, Frankie Beverly, George Benson, Earth, Wind and Fire, SWV, excuse me, R. Kelly. I don't know how y'all feel about that. Patti LaBelle. And as we just saw before, we saw older Stanley Clarke. Now we see young, 20-year-old Stanley Clarke.
Very different.
Or, how old was he then? 28, 30, late 20s, early 30s whenever he was playing this. You got Johnny Gill. When I walked into the shop and saw this, he was like, B, I got something for you. I saw the saxophone back hit and was sold. This is one of the best shirts that I've seen in a while. And you'll see some really cool Cincinnati Jazz Festival shirts. I mean, like really, really cool graphics, but I haven't seen one this crazy.
Yeah.
It's very vibrant, and it's different than the other white shirts that I have that, you know, might just be white and black. This one still has some reds, has some yellows, and just the little details. And I love how they put the, it reminds me of, I don't even know what you call it whenever you're going through, not even the commercials, but on TV, and they have just the little boxes, like for Jeopardy, like, oh, here's this person. I just love how they feature each artist, you know. It's, yeah, very cinematic to me. Here's I got this one fairly recently. A very iconic shirt that I've been trying to get my hands on since I started collecting. Just the sheer amount of star power in this photo is ridiculous. So we have Charlie Parker, who we've seen. We have Charles Mingus. We have Thelonious Monk, and I believe, is this Max Roach in the back? I could be wrong.
Haynes?
Oh, it's Roy Haynes. Excuse me. He'd be mad. He'd be very upset. He would be very upset. It's the incomparable Roy Haynes, who I believe is 90 now, and still playing at a very high level, which is beautiful. This is the Open Door. I don't know if I mentioned that in the first half, but the Open Door was one of the hippest jazz clubs in New York. And, it's not open anymore, but a lot of the jazz greats used to go there and perform and cut their teeth there. And some of the best jam sessions used to happen there right at the Open Door. So this was really a shirt I was super stoked to get. And technically, it's not a Thelonious Monk shirt, but it's my first one with him on it, which, is very meaningful to me. Thelonious Monk shirts are super duper hard to find.
Yeah.
So having just one with him on it, and the rest of the cast that I look up to so much, that'll do it for me.
Yeah.
So a famous trumpet player that a lot of people know, Dizzy Gillespie. So we have on the left, we have younger Dizzy Gillespie, and in my hands we have the older Dizzy Gillespie. I want to say maybe when he was in his 60s. He was always known for blowing out his cheeks, because I remember he had a blowout, and after his surgery he just wasn't able to control his cheeks, so it just became a thing for him to puff out his cheeks like that. Everybody knows him for that. I know there's a couple pictures of him doing. That's one of like his signature or iconic poses. But I love both of these shirts. He was just a very, very happy individual, and that's something that I hear through the trumpet, like just straight joy and appreciation and gratitude whenever he picks up the horn or picked up the horn and put it to his mouth. And that's one thing that I love about his music. He really captures the joy of jazz and what it's supposed to do, which is bring people together for the common goal of the music, just to be able to appreciate that. Let's get into another one. I also got this one from Naptown Thrift. It's an oldie. It's one of the first ones I got from him, actually. Jazz is where it's at, but the back hit is really what I love the most, smoking section only, because one thing that we say as jazz musicians, like, oh man, you're smoking, you're killing. So I kind of like the play on words, smoking section only, like, okay, I'm that guy, I'm smoking, man, I'm over here cooking it. So yeah, this is one of my favorite shirts. I wear it to jam sessions because it makes me feel empowered. Like, okay, I'm gonna play some good jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun shirt though. I can only imagine, somebody else wearing that. I believe that's an 80s shirt. So I can only imagine somebody wearing that back at a jam session. Like, hey guys, smoking section only. You can't play with us. So we got a nice Bill Clinton. If you guys didn't know, he plays or played the saxophone. I don't know if you want to count him actually playing the saxophone. He has the ability to play it, but I wouldn't call him a saxophone player, But I can appreciate that he was the first president that was still playing the saxophone. I think that's cool, and he was also able to bring a lot of attention to the saxophone as well. Bring over some jazz greats to do a tribute to the president, which was cool. I believe there's a video of that still on YouTube. There's Kenny G, Grover Washington Jr. Who were some other players that were on that? I know those two were for sure on there, but it was nice to at least see that whenever he came into office, he made it a priority to highlight and build some programs or national programs for jazz, and not only jazz, but just music in general. Got another Maynard Ferguson, which is one of my favorites, if not my favorite out of the two. I love the colors on this one. Now the other one was, very similar, but as far as the graphics, very similar. Colorway, very different. But the back hit is really what I like about it. But these Maynard shirts are very, very creative, and I love how the colors pop. And again, Naptown Thrift.
Common thread, yeah. Bailey shoutouts and Aaron shoutouts. They're always the plugs, man. They always have the stuff.
Hey, look out. We've got the Godfather once again, Louis Armstrong or Louis Armstrong, also called Satchmo or Pops. This is the more common shirt that you'll find of him. You can find some other ones that are true vintage, like true vintage, that are really hard to find. And if you get your hands on them, never let them leave your collection. But this is one that I feel like is a staple for anybody who is a listener of jazz, just wants to get into it. You got to start with Pops. You got to start with Satchmo. And I was fortunate enough to spend some time at the Louis Armstrong archives whenever I was in grad school, because they're housed at Queens College where I went. Okay. So I was able to hold his trumpet and check and listen to different interviews and recordings, and listening to him argue with his wife, just like little things like that. Visit his old house. So, wow. Wearing this shirt and seeing this, because this exact picture of him was over in the Louis Armstrong archives, it just makes me think about that, my time that I spent there. Whenever I wear this shirt, just looking at the graphic.
When you were at the archives, did they call him Louis or Louis?
They called him Louis.
Okay.
So that's why, I say it just depends on who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
A lot of people overseas, they refer to him as Louis, and Americans, we still call him Louis.
Americans, I feel like, I think like the general public would probably call him Louis more often, but it's interesting.
Yeah, they call him Louis over there, and even his wife, she called him Louis. So, it just depends. His buddies would call him Louis or Louis. So I'm not gonna say he didn't care, because I didn't know the man, but it just seemed like he didn't really have too much of a preference. Yeah. Let's go with this other one. I just got this one a couple of weeks ago from my buddy Carson. Thank you for my Christmas gift. I appreciate you, brother. It's just a standard jazz shirt for me, with a nice 5-piece ensemble here at the bottom. Just 92. Very simple, but very tasteful. And he knows I love shirts like this. If it has anything referencing jazz or any jazz musicians, I'm all over it. So definitely glad to have this one in the collection. And last but not least, I got this one not too long ago, because we'll be playing for the Wes Montgomery tribute. But this is Indy's hometown hero, Wes Montgomery, one of the most influential guitar players in the world. Doesn't matter what genre, one of the most influential. My buddy Keough Zhang, whenever we were in grad school, when I told him I was from Indianapolis, he cried because he had, studied 15 years of his life and has a guitar modeled after Wes Montgomery's. He just studied his style, so everything that he played was like listening to Wes Montgomery, just a copy, because he had dedicated so much. So it's nice to see how much somebody from Indianapolis, who has influenced somebody from North Korea, who has never even been to Indianapolis but longs to come to Indianapolis and see his home, and just what his music has done. It really has broken a lot of barriers, and it's nice that a hometown hero such as Wes, and even his brothers as well, have broken through and really pushed the music. So this one really does mean a lot to me. Wes Montgomery was thought of as a sellout for a little bit, which hurt my heart whenever I had heard that in undergrad, because he switched over and started doing more pop. And if you want to call it smooth jazz, you can, but with more traditional jazz lines and language over it. So I'm really appreciative of him for doing that, because that's what we're doing now, as far as, blending traditional jazz with other styles. Like I had mentioned, Kamasi Washington and Terrace Martin, they're still playing traditional jazz language over hip hop, and they're making it a nice blend, and it's being cohesive. So Wes, Man, myth, the legend. And it's on a great tag, the Cuties tag, made in USA. One of my favorite tags of all time.
Yeah, this is a good one to end on. It's just, it's one of the cooler tags that we've seen today, or most different tags that we've seen today. And the graphic is awesome. I love his guitar. It's like any album that he, ever had, like whether it was on the cover or if it was a gatefold, that you would just see that, and it's just like, you would know like the music was going to be beautiful because of the instrument it was played on.
Yes,
so
sir.
This is like one of the best shirts to end on. I appreciate you showing us your tees, but I also appreciate you sharing your expertise on this topic. I feel like it's not one that a lot of people like your age maybe that people have that information to share, or that connection. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And being a part of this series. So thank you so much.
Nah, thank you for having me, man. It's been a blast, and I'm glad that I was able to share a little bit about myself and the music that I love so much.
Yeah, and the clothes.
And the clothes, yeah. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's cool because we can have a conversation about like this topic, and it all really is around clothes, and that's what collections is all about. So thank you all for tuning in for this episode. There will be more, and we'll hopefully maybe see you in the future. I would love to come and see your vinyl collection. So this is definitely not the last time we're seeing him. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Collections.